The Capitol Grill in downtown Boston was packed for a Tuesday evening. Leather booths, dark wood paneling, the quiet murmur of power conversations happening over $200 stakes. This was where deals got made, where executives courted investors, where my parents held their quarterly shareholder dinners for Chin Technologies. I stood at the entrance, looking at the private dining room where 23 people were already seated. My parents at the head of the table. My older brother Kevin beside them, perfectly positioned as heir apparent. A collection of investors, board members and key executives filling the remaining seats. There was no place card with my name. Andrew, my father said, noticing me hovering in the doorway. His tone carried the particular edge of irritation he reserved for inconvenient interruptions. What are you doing here? You sent me the invitation, I said quietly. Quarterly investor dinner. 7 o'clock. That was a mistake. He didn't even stand up, just gestured dismissively from his seat. Sarah from my office must have added you to the distribution list by accident. This dinner is for actual investors. My mother looked up from her conversation with the CFO. Andrew, honey, this really isn't appropriate. These dinners are business-focused. You wouldn't understand the discussions. I'm a shareholder, I pointed out. Kevin laughed, the sound carrying across the private room. Andy, you own like what, 200 shares? That's barely worth the paperwork. This dinner is for people who actually matter to the company. Several of the other attendees chuckled politely. I recognized most of them. The venture capital firm that had funded Chin Technologies' Series B expansion, the angel investors who'd believed in my parents' vision back in 2016, the institutional investors who'd joined during the Series C round last year. I own more than 200 shares, I said. Fine, maybe 500. Dad waved his hand impatiently. The point stands. Everyone at this table has invested significant capital in Chin Technologies. Real money. Life-changing money. You're here because you're family, not because you're a serious investor. Mom stood, walking over to guide me away from the dining room entrance. Sweetheart, I know you want to be involved, but you need to understand business dynamics. These people have risked millions. They deserve exclusive access to company updates and strategic discussions. How much did they invest? I asked. That's confidential, she said automatically. Then softening. But between you and me? The smallest investor at this table put in $2 million. Most are in the $5 to $10 million range. That's the threshold for these dinners. I see. You're 27 years old. You work at a nonprofit. That's wonderful, truly, but it means you don't have the kind of capital that earns you a seat at this table. She squeezed my shoulder. There's no shame in that. Not everyone can be a major investor. Kevin appeared behind her, playing the supportive older brother role he'd perfected. Look, little bro, mom and dad are trying to be gentle. But this is embarrassing. For them and for you. These are serious business people. They don't want to spend dinner explaining basic concepts to someone who works in community outreach. I understand the concepts, I said. You think you do, Kevin corrected. That's different. I have my Harvard MBA. I've spent 3 years as VP of Operations at Chin Technologies. I live and breathe this stuff. You help organize food drives. It was true that I worked at a nonprofit. The Boston Community Development Fund, focusing on affordable housing initiatives. I'd been there for 6 years, ever since graduating from Boston University with a degree in urban planning. What Kevin didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd founded the organization. And funded it. With $15 million from my first tech startup exit. What they also didn't know was that I'd been systematically investing in Chin Technologies since its Series A round in 2016, carefully building my position through a network of shell companies and investment vehicles that kept my identity hidden from the cap table. You're right, I said quietly. I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone. Good man. Dad had joined the conversation, clearly wanting to resolve this quickly and return to his investors. Look, we'll do lunch sometime. Just us. I'll explain what's happening with the company. But tonight is for the people who've actually written checks. Understood. Mom kissed my cheek. Order something nice from the main dining room. Put it on my card. And Andrew, maybe think about where you want your career to go. The nonprofit work is admirable, but you're almost 30. It might be time to consider something more substantial. They walked back to the private dining room. The door closed. Through the frosted glass, I could see them returning to their seats, the dinner resuming as if I'd never been there. I stood in the hallway for a moment looking at my phone. Then I opened my banking app and navigated to my primary investment account at Thornhill Capital Management. The account that showed current holdings of $340 million across various investments and asset classes. Chin Technologies represented my single largest position. $94.7 million invested across 5 different entities over 8 years. I'd been 20 at my first exit, a mobile app for municipal service requests that I'd built during sophomore year. The city of Boston had acquired it for $8 million. I'd used $5 million of that to create 3 shell companies and invest in my parents' Series A round. At 22, my second company, a platform connecting nonprofits with corporate volunteers, had been acquired by LinkedIn for $31 million. I'd put $25 million of that into Chin Technologies Series B. At 24, a consulting project turned into a proprietary algorithm that Salesforce bought for $67 million. Another $40 million went into Chin Technologies Series C. By 25, I'd diversified into early-stage angel investments, cryptocurrency positions and real estate. But Chin Technologies remained my anchor investment. My parents' company. The family business I'd supported from the shadows while being treated like the disappointing son who chose social work over real business. I pulled up my contacts and called Martin Reeves, my portfolio manager at Thornhill. "Andrew," Martin answered immediately. "What can I do for you?" "I need to liquidate my Chin Technologies position. All of it. Every entity." There was a pause. "That's $94.7 million across 5 investment vehicles. May I ask why?" "Personal reasons." "I need to inform you of the consequences," Martin said carefully. "Chin Technologies is preparing for an IPO next quarter. Your position could be worth $200 million or more after they go public. Liquidating now means leaving significant value on the table." "I'm aware. And the liquidation will require SEC disclosure within 30 minutes. The board will be notified. Your identity as the beneficial owner will be revealed." "I understand." Another pause. "This is your largest position. Your anchor investment. Are you absolutely certain?" I looked through the frosted glass at the dinner party I wasn't allowed to attend. At my parents laughing with their real investors. At Kevin holding court, the golden child who'd done everything right. "Execute the sale," I said. "All 5 entities. Immediately." "Confirmed. I'll begin the process now. Andrew, for what it's worth, I'm sorry whatever happened to precipitate this decision." I ended the call and opened my secure messaging app, texting my lawyer Patricia Montgomery. "Andrew, liquidating full Chin Tech position. We'll need documentation of beneficial ownership across all entities. How quickly can you compile?" "Patricia, I have everything ready to go. Updated this morning per standard quarterly review. Give me 20 minutes to finalize disclosure documents." "This is really happening?" "Andrew, yes." "Patricia, they have no idea, do they?" "Andrew, none." "Patricia, this is going to be spectacular. Stand by." I walked to the bar in the main dining room and ordered a whiskey. "Neat." The bartender poured Macallan 18, $1.45 per glass. I paid cash. My phone buzzed with the first notification. "Martin, Phoenix Holdings LLC liquidation initiated. $23.4 million processing." I sipped my whiskey. "Martin, Cascade Ventures LP liquidation confirmed. $19.2 million transferred." The whiskey was smooth, smoky, expensive. "Martin, Sterling Capital Partners sale executing. $18.8 million processing." Through the bar's speakers, Sinatra was singing about doing things his way. "Martin, Redwood Investment Group liquidation complete. $16.7 million transferred." I ordered a second whiskey. "Martin, Summit Equity Holdings final sale confirmed. $16.6 million transferred. Total liquidation, $94.7 million. All positions cleared from Chin Technologies." My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but the Boston area code suggested it was someone from the dinner. I declined the call. It rang again. Different number. I declined again. A text message appeared from Kevin. "Call me right now." Another text from my mother. Andrew, we need to talk. Please call immediately. My father. Come back to the restaurant. No. I ordered a third whiskey and pulled up Patricia's message. Patricia. Disclosure documents filed with SEC. Board notifications sent. Beneficial ownership records attached. You're about to become very popular. She'd attached a PDF. I opened it. Chin Technologies Incorporated Beneficial Ownership Disclosure filed pursuant to SEC Rule 13D1. Reporting person, Andrew James Chin. Investment entities and holdings. Phoenix Holdings LC. 2,847,332 shares. $23.4 million. Liquidated. Cascade Ventures LP. 2,334,109 shares. $19.2 million. Liquidated. Sterling Capital Partners. 2,286,477 shares. $18.8 million. Liquidated. Redwood Investment Group. 2,031,055 shares. $16.7 million. Liquidated. Summit Equity Holdings. 2,019,834 shares. $16.6 million. Liquidated. Total position. 11,518,807 shares. Percentage of company. 31.7% total investment value. $94,700,000 status. Complete liquidation, all shares sold. My phone was ringing constantly now. Calls from my parents, from Kevin, from numbers I didn't recognize that were probably board members or executives. I let them ring. The bartender refilled my water glass. Popular evening? You could say that. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, Urgent. Emergency board meeting, all directors required. I wasn't a director, so I ignored it. Another email, this time from the Chin Technologies Investor Relations account. Significant shareholder disclosure, immediate review required. I was finishing my third whiskey when my father appeared at the bar. His face was red, his breath coming in short gasps like he'd run from the private dining room. What the hell did you do? He demanded. I sold my shares, I said calmly. Your shares? Andrew, you just tanked our IPO. The bartender quietly moved to the other end of the bar, sensing the conversation was about to get intense. I sold my shares, I repeated. I'm allowed to do that. I'm a shareholder. You're not just a shareholder. Dad's voice was rising. According to the disclosure that just hit our board's inbox, you owned 32% of Chin Technologies. You were our largest investor. Correct. How is that possible? You work at a nonprofit. I work at a nonprofit I founded with $15 million from my first company exit, I explained. I've had 3 successful startups. Total exits, $106 million. I invested $94.7 million of that in Chin Technologies across 8 years. Mom had joined us now with Kevin right behind her. Several other dinner attendees were filtering into the bar area, their expressions ranging from shocked to furious. You've been our anchor investor this entire time? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Phoenix Holdings, Cascade Ventures, Sterling Capital, Redwood Investment, Summit Equity. Those were all you? Correct. Kevin grabbed my arm. Do you have any idea what you've just done? We're supposed to go public in 3 months. Our largest shareholder just dumped everything. The IPO is dead. The company's valuation is going to crater. I gently removed his hand from my arm. Then you should have invited me to dinner. The bar had gone completely silent. Even the bartender had stopped moving, frozen mid-pour. Dad's face was cycling through colors, red to purple to an alarming shade of white. You destroyed our IPO. Because you weren't invited to dinner? No, I corrected. I sold my investment in a company whose leadership told me I don't belong at the table. That I'm not a serious investor. That I wouldn't understand business discussions. That I'm an embarrassment. You are embarrassing us. Kevin shouted. Look what you've done. A man I recognized as Robert Chin, no relation but the lead partner from Sequoia Capital who'd led the Series C, stepped forward. Mr. Chin, Andrew Chin, I mean. We need to discuss this rationally. Your liquidation is going to trigger catastrophic consequences. For whom? I asked. For everyone. Robert's professional calm was cracking. The other investors, the employees, the company itself. Your parents have built something remarkable over 12 years. You're going to destroy it. I didn't build Chin Technologies, I said. My parents did. I just funded it. Apparently that doesn't earn me a seat at the table. Mom had tears in her eyes. Andrew, please. This is our life's work. Your father and I have poured everything into this company. Not everything, I said quietly. I poured $94.7 million. You poured innovation and leadership. Both were necessary. But only one of us was dismissed as irrelevant. A woman from the dinner party, Margaret Wu, I thought from the Institutional Investor Group, spoke up. The market is going to react very badly to this. A 32% liquidation right before an IPO signals serious problems. Our fund will have to reassess our position. That's your prerogative, I said. You're going to trigger a cascade, she continued. If we pull out, others will follow. The company could lose 60% of its value in a week. My phone buzzed. Martin. Stock price down 23% in after-hours trading. News spreading fast. Another message. 3 institutional investors have requested emergency calls. 2 are discussing liquidation. I showed the messages to the assembled group. Dad collapsed onto a bar stool. This can't be happening. Let me make sure I understand the situation, I said, setting down my empty glass. 8 years ago, I invested $5 million in Series A when Chin Technologies was worth $20 million. You were struggling for funding. Most VCs had passed. You were 3 months from bankruptcy. No one contradicted me. I invested another $25 million in Series B when the 2020 recession hit and your original investors got cold feet. That funding kept you operational through the pandemic. Mom nodded slowly, recognition dawning. Series C, I put in $40 million to fund your international expansion. And over the years, I've provided bridge financing, emergency capital, and patient money that never demanded board seats or operational control. The silent partner, Robert said softly. We always wondered who was behind those entities. They showed up at every critical moment. Never asked questions. Never interfered. Just provided capital when we needed it most. That was Andrew? Kevin's voice cracked. This whole time, I confirmed. While you were getting your Harvard MBA, I was building and exiting companies. While you were climbing the corporate ladder at Chin Technologies, I was managing a $340 million portfolio. While you were explaining to me how business works, I was funding your salary. But you never said anything, Mom protested. You never told us. I wanted to see if you'd value me for who I am, I said. Not for what I have. I wanted to know if my parents would respect my work, my choices, my contributions without knowing about the money. That's not fair, Dad said. Isn't it? You built a company worth $300 million. I'm proud of you. Genuinely proud. I invested almost $100 million because I believed in what you created. I gestured toward the private dining room. But tonight you told me I don't belong at the table. That I'm not a serious investor. That I'm an embarrassment. We didn't know. Kevin shouted. Exactly, I said quietly. You didn't know and you treated me like I was worthless anyway. What does that say about how you evaluate people? If I'm not worth listening to when you think I'm a nonprofit worker, but suddenly I'm important when you know I control 32% of your company, your entire value system is broken. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Patricia. I answered on speaker. Andrew, the SEC filing is public. Bloomberg just picked it up. TechCrunch is running a story. The headline is, Chin Technologies loses anchor investor ahead of planned IPO. She paused. It's going viral. Thank you, Patricia. Also, I'm getting calls from 3 different law firms representing Chin Technologies investors. They want to know if you're willing to discuss reversing the liquidation. I'm not. Understood. I'll inform them. Another pause. For what it's worth. I'm sorry it came to this. I ended the call. The bar crowd had grown. At least 15 people from the investor dinner were now clustered around, their faces showing various stages of shock, anger, and panic. A younger man I didn't recognize pushed forward. I'm David Huang from Benchmark. We invested $8 million in Series C. Your liquidation just cost us $2 million in paper value, and if the IPO collapses we could lose everything. Then you should ask Chin Technologies leadership why they alienated their largest investor, I replied. Over a dinner invitation? David's voice was incredulous. Over 8 years of dismissal, I corrected. The dinner was just the final data point in a very long pattern. Robert from Sequoia was on his phone, speaking in urgent tones. He ended the call and turned to my parents. The IPO underwriters want an emergency call. Tomorrow morning. They need to understand the stability of the shareholder base. What do we tell them? Mom asked desperately. The truth, I said. That your largest investor liquidated his position because company leadership told him he didn't belong at the table. That should make for an interesting prospectus disclosure. Kevin's face had gone from angry to calculating. How much would it take to reverse this? Name your price. There is no price. Everyone has a price. $10 million? $20 million? We can structure it as consulting fees, advisory role, whatever you want. I don't want your money, I said. I have $340 million. What I wanted was respect. Basic human respect from my family. But apparently that was too much to ask. Dad finally stood up. Son, please. I'm begging you. Don't destroy what we've built. I'm not destroying anything, I replied. I'm removing my capital from a company whose values don't align with mine. That's prudent portfolio management. Our values. Mom's voice rose. We built this company on innovation and integrity. You built it on my capital, I countered. Capital you accepted for 8 years while simultaneously telling me I wasn't serious enough, smart enough, or business savvy enough to warrant basic inclusion. That's not integrity. My phone buzzed again. Martin, stock down 31%. Trading volume surging. Market expects further drops. Margaret from the Institutional Investor Group was also on her phone. She ended her call with a grim expression. Our investment committee is recommending liquidation. If the anchor investor has lost confidence, we can't justify maintaining our position. No. Dad grabbed her arm. Margaret, please. This is a misunderstanding. A family issue. The company fundamentals are strong. The fundamentals don't matter if the cap table is collapsing, she replied. We invested because we trusted the shareholder base. That trust is gone. Another investor spoke up, James Park from Excel Partners. We're out too. I'm sorry, but we can't take this level of uncertainty into an IPO. We'll be filing liquidation paperwork tomorrow. One by one, the investors began announcing their decisions. $8 million liquidating. $12 million pulling out. $15 million requesting emergency board meetings to discuss exits. In the span of 10 minutes, I watched $67 million in investment commitments evaporate. Kevin had gone pale. This is financial suicide. For all of us. Andrew, you're destroying your own investment. I already liquidated, I pointed out. At $8.22 per share. You'll notice the current after-hours price is $5.67. I exited at a profit. Everyone else is going to take a loss. You knew this would happen, Robert said slowly. You knew liquidating would trigger a cascade. I understood the probable outcomes, yes. So this is revenge. No, I said. This is consequences. There's a difference. Mom was crying openly now. Andrew, I'm your mother. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for $94.7 million, I replied. Which I invested because you're my mother. Because I believed in you. Because I wanted to support the family business. But at some point you have to ask yourself, what's more important? Your son, or the version of your son you wish existed? That's not fair, she sobbed. You're right, I agreed. It's not fair that I had to prove my worth with a 9-figure investment before my own parents would take me seriously. But here we are. Patricia called again. I answered on speaker. Andrew, the story is exploding. Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Financial Times, everyone's covering it. The narrative is, family rift destroys tech IPO. Chin Technologies' PR team is getting destroyed. And she hesitated. And what? Several of your portfolio companies have reached out. They want to express support. They're offering to invest in your next ventures. They're also saying, and I'm quoting here, "This is why we trust Andrew Chin. He doesn't tolerate disrespect even from family." The bar crowd murmured at that. "Thank you, Patricia. Send them my gratitude." I hung up and finished my water. Dad's voice was hoarse. "What do we do now?" "You continue building Chin Technologies," I said. "Without me. You find new investors who meet your standards. You explain to the IPO underwriters why your largest shareholder liquidated. You rebuild trust with the market. It'll take time, but you're capable leaders. You'll figure it out." "And you?" Mom asked. "I'm moving my capital to investments that appreciate competence regardless of its packaging," I said. "I have 17 companies in my portfolio that value my input. I'm expanding my angel investing. I'm starting a fund focused on overlooked founders. People who get dismissed because they don't have the right pedigree or background." "People like you," Kevin said bitterly. "People like me," I confirmed. "People who build real things while being told they're not serious enough. People who prove themselves through results, not credentials." Robert stepped forward one more time. "Andrew, I've worked in venture capital for 23 years. I've seen brilliant founders destroy companies over ego. I've seen families torn apart over money. This feels like both." "Then you've misunderstood," I said. "This isn't about ego or money. It's about dignity. It's about being seen. It's about not spending 8 years as someone's safety net while being told you're not strong enough to stand at their side." I stood up, leaving cash on the bar for my drinks and a generous tip. "The liquidation is complete. The SEC filings are public. My position is gone. Chin Technologies will survive or it won't, but either way it's no longer my problem." I walked toward the exit. "Andrew." Dad called after me. "You're still my son. That doesn't change." I turned back to look at him, at both my parents, at Kevin, at the assembled investors who'd spent the evening enjoying a dinner I wasn't allowed to attend. "You're right," I said. "I'm still your son. Which is why this hurts. Which is why I spent 8 years hoping you'd see me. Really see me. Not the disappointing kid who chose nonprofit work. Not the embarrassment who doesn't understand business. Just me." "We see you now," Mom whispered. "No," I corrected gently. "You see my bank balance. There's a difference." I left the restaurant. Outside, Boston's financial district glittered with evening lights. Skyscrapers housing the companies I'd invested in, the startups I'd mentored, the portfolio I'd built while living in a modest apartment in Cambridge and working at a nonprofit. My phone buzzed with a message from Martin. "Martin, final accounting complete. Chin Technologies liquidation profit. $37.2 million on initial $57.5 million investment. 64.7% return over 8 years. Where do you want me to reallocate?" I walked toward the T station typing my response. "Andrew, find me companies founded by people who were told they weren't good enough. People who built something despite being dismissed. People who proved that competence doesn't require permission. Martin, I know at least 12 companies that fit that profile." Setting up calls. Another message, this time from Patricia. "Patricia, your parents' lawyer just called. They want to discuss a settlement. They're offering board positions, equity adjustments, whatever it takes. Andrew, tell them to save their energy. The capital is gone. The relationship was gone 8 years ago. I just finally accepted it tonight." Patricia, understood. "For the record, I'm proud of you." I descended into the subway station, leaving behind the restaurant, the dinner, the family that had finally seen what I was worth. But only after it was too late to matter. My phone rang one last time. "Kevin." I answered. "I hope you're happy," he said, his voice tight with rage. "You just destroyed 12 years of work because your feelings were hurt." "No," I said calmly. "I removed my investment from a company that demonstrated it doesn't value its stakeholders. That's not emotion. That's fiduciary responsibility. You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I acknowledged. "But probably not. See, Kevin, I spent 8 years regretting being born into a family that only valued me for credentials I didn't have. Tonight I stopped regretting that. Tonight I chose to value myself on my own terms. That's selfish." "It's self-preservation," I corrected. "There's a difference." I ended the call. The train arrived. I boarded, finding a seat by the window. Around me, people were living their lives. Students studying, professionals commuting, couples planning their evenings. None of them knew that I'd just liquidated $94.7 million and triggered the collapse of a billion-dollar IPO. None of them knew that I'd spent 8 years funding my family's success while being treated like their biggest disappointment. None of them needed to know. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's indifference. It's walking away from people who don't see your value and finding people who do. It's taking your $340 million portfolio and investing it in founders who understand what it's like to be underestimated. It's building something new on your own terms without waiting for permission from people who'll never grant it. The train crossed the Charles River and I watched my reflection in the dark window. A 27-year-old nonprofit worker who'd just reshaped the Boston tech landscape with a single phone call. My family had built Chin Technologies. I'd funded it. And now I'd freed myself from it. The family business would survive or collapse on its own merits. But I was done being the invisible foundation that no one acknowledged until it cracked.